Hello and welcome back everybody to Iconic Rod and Custom. I'm Greg Martin and today we're starting episode 4 of Mighty Mouse. Now in episode 3 you saw us, we built both left and right rear doors for the truck. Now we have them temporarily mounted on there, but in between at the beginning of this episode you're going to see we moved the door or the pillars, the rear pillars back a 1/4 of an inch just for a little bit more room for our hinges and whatnot. Now the rear panel for this truck was contoured to fit the original truck door panels. They don't have as much of a sweep at the bottom as this has, so we trimmed this a little bit and shrunk this in, and it's a pretty darn close fit right now. We're going to tweak it a little bit more, but then we have to add these cab corners to the bottom. Now this is a very, very complicated piece to make on machines, let alone to do it by hand, but I elected to do it by hand because most people aren't going to have some of the heavy machines that we have. So what I did, I just cut strips or segments to get my contours both this way and this way. Now this is called a reverse curve, and it can be a complicated piece. So for anybody that's just starting out and needs to learn, this is an easy way to do it. When it's all welded up, it becomes one solid piece of metal anyways, and when it's dressed up, you're not really going to be able to tell anyway. So as long as it's protected on the backside before we finally weld it in, so it doesn't start rusting right away or anything, or hopefully never rust, we should be good to go. So I hope you enjoy. All right, folks, I'm going to try this voiceover thing. Our shop gets really, really noisy at times, and it's hard to talk and really describe well without being interrupted because of some of the noises. And if you watched in the last couple episodes, I was putting titles and descriptions out in certain segments to describe what we were doing. So I'm going to try things this way once, and we'll see how it goes. So you can see that we had already taken the left rear pillar off, and Scott's placing it back in. We moved it a 1/4 of an inch, and he's tacking it back in place there now. But we'll measure quite a few times. We want to make sure everything's perfect on both sides, and we'll tack them in there. We're not going to weld them fully solid yet until we're exactly sure that's where we want them. Once we had a rear post tacked into position, we're cutting the upper angles.
This is the same process we used on the center post, and it tapers in at the top, and it simulates the same angle as the window frame on the doors, as well as the rear cab panel itself. As you'll see, once we get these cut out here, we start setting the rear panel on, and we have to do some trimming for that, but it actually fits extremely well once it's all into position. So we got the rear panel on there and centered up left to right, and we clamped it on for the night. The next morning, obviously we're here, we got it marked out. We're going to lay it on a stand and start trimming the sides of it. There's flanges that come in because these Morris Miners, they had the rear cab panel was bolted on. So ultimately, when this is done, it's going to be welded in solid. It's not going to be bolted back together. But yeah, as you can see, we're doing some trimming here, and we'll get it to fit perfect. Takes a few times, you know, as a lot of you know, it doesn't always happen the first time. But yeah, we're working hard at this, and we'll keep at it. So after we trimmed it, we checked the fitment of it, and as you can see here, it's back on the stand. Now this tool that I'm using, I've made probably 20 plus years ago, and it's called a tucking fork. It is actually used to manipulate the metal. It creates humps as you twist it, as you can see, and then you smash them down with a hammer and dolly to trap the metal in, and it actually shrinks the metal up as you do that. It takes a lot more times to shrink something up than you would on a, say, a Lancaster or an Erco shrinker stretcher. But it works, and it works well in some cases. With this, I couldn't get it actually in one of our shrinker stretchers, so the tucking fork was the best thing to use. Now this whole truck was pretty bad shape. It had been hit in the left side pretty hard, and we have to straighten out some of the metal here anyways and recontour it. As you can see, we had to put a little more of a contour in it, but this left side was pretty banged in to begin with, so hammer and dolly, you know, and do a little shrinking here and there, and we'll get it to fit perfect. So but just using basic hand tools here. Yeah, we have bigger, you know, some decent equipment in the shop, but anybody can do this. I mean, with a little bit of practice and lots of patience, you'll build your skill set up, you know. And with the world of YouTube videos and stuff now, with all the how-tos out here, it's YouTube's the biggest and the best tool that you can actually have to gain knowledge. When I first started doing this, it wasn't very well known, and you know, the internet has changed the world for us, but and I'm thankful for that. But it was a tough learning curve to start with. You know, the internet, they had the Metal Meat forums is where I actually found and really got started into it from there. Don't even know if that's still around anymore, to be honest with you. So Scott's repeating the same process that I just did. His side wasn't quite as heavily damaged, but we still had to do the same, make the same contour for the door on the other side. And as you'll see, we put marks on there where the damaged areas are, so we know where to fit them. You know, you can see it in the corners right here. So as you can see in the walk around of this, it has turned out really well. It's fitting darn close to where we really want it. So we'll take it off one or two more times and try to get it perfect. But we're going to start the cab corners on this, and I elected to use basic hand tools. We're going to need tin snips, a hammer, a pipe, or anything to bend the metal over. As you can see in the background, Scott's just using the slip rule to form some of that metal. But anyways, you know, and we're going to need a welder. So anybody can really do this to make complicated parts. This is called a reverse curve. And yeah, I could do it on a power hammer or planishing hammer. But we elected to do it this way because honestly, it'll be a little bit quicker for us. And once it's dressed up, ground down, it's going to look like one solid piece of metal anyway. So this is how we're going to do it, and just follow along. When you're fabricating something like this, it's all trial and error. There's no game playbook or anything, you know, plans to go off of. You can always start it over, you know, and learn from your mistakes. And a lot of times you can correct them. It's just metal. You can take it out, add it. So the easiest thing to do is just start doing it. You got to take a chance and just do it. And if it doesn't come out right the first time, try again. You know, don't let it get you down. As you can see, the lower half of the cab corner with my left thumb there, I cut it into strips. Now they taper a little bit wider as they go down, and that is to make the contour at the bottom as it goes around the cab itself. These are all just tack welded in here now, and once they're dressed up, they're going to look pretty clean. But there again, there's a lot of trial and error and fit and little manipulation with a hammer, whatever. But you know, you just got to keep at it. So as you can see here in a little bit, I'll add more to it, and it starts looking more like it should. This particular piece that I'm working on, it was part of the door jamb, and you saw me marking it out with the contour of the door, and I'm just grinding it down little by little to get it to fit right, and then I'll tack weld it all together. Well, as you can see, I had dressed it up, ground the welds down some. Now it's actually starting to look like a part. It'll look really good once it's all done. You'll never know it was welded. Every time you weld, the metal shrinks. It wants to shrink in on itself. So as much welding as we're doing, it's going to move, and we're going to have to manipulate. You can see me twisting it here a little bit, get it back in shape. And it's always nice to have an extra set of eyes just to get their opinion on it, to see, make sure everything's looking kosher. My body line on that isn't exactly the way I wanted it, so I'm going to remanipulate that. I'll probably cut and change that contour a little bit, but that's what it is when you're making your own parts. hey, it's starting to look like a cab corner. And with that being said, we're going to end this video. But first, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell, because we have some really cool stuff slated here coming up in the future. So stay tuned for the next one. Catch you then.